I think for me, the first step is to say, no, I have this set of life experiences and I know what I know. Because
Mm-hmm.
what you're being met with is that you say, oh, this is important. You sit across a table full of dudes that never lived it. And they're like, is it actually important? And it takes so much strength to say, yes, I know it's important.
Hi, everybody. As you know, my name's Evelyn. I am the Senior Communications Manager for the Bright Skills Project. And today we are delighted to have Ida Tin with us. Ida is the co-founder and lead of the Clue app, which is a menstrual app for women, a menstrual tracking app for women. Ida's going to correct me now in a second, so more than happy for those corrections. And she's Hormone Challenge Lead at SPRIND. And today we're going to be talking about women's health and the age of innovation, the rise of FemTech, for which Ida is actually the pioneer for. So Ida, I can see that maybe you're very familiar with being called a pioneer, but maybe could you tell us a bit more about the Hormone Challenge? It sounds very interesting.
Oh, I'm very honored that you call me a pioneer. Now I'm leading a grand challenge at Sprint. So Sprint is the German federal agency of breakthrough innovation, as they call it. So they do many different things. One of the things they do is a format called a challenge, which is typically a 3-year program where sort of a focus area is chosen, and then there is grants given to people who are innovating in this space. So I had the huge kind of privilege to define an area in women's health that they could create a challenge around.
Mm-hmm.
Or rather, they asked me to create a challenge. So I have designed and scoped the challenge, which is a 40 million euro program, to see if we can turn hormones, these molecules, into a data stream. If there's a way that we can do continuous hormone monitoring in women. And I chose that area because after having been, well, in women's health many years, I could see that that was one of the biggest data gaps that we have in women's health. We have very little, actually, insight, understanding data on what all our hormones are doing all the time. We can measure a hormone right now, take a blood sample or a urine test or a saliva test, and we get this sort of snapshot
Mm.
picture of where some hormones are, but we are missing the curves. We're missing to understand longitude developments. We know that hormones are kind of like the operating system in our bodies. They influence our cognitive health, our bone health, our brain health, our heart health, and immune systems, basically almost everything, our reproductive health, obviously. And yet we don't have a way to really fully understand how everything kind of works together. So I suggested that challenge and they said yes. So now I'm leading it. That's why I'm Hormone Challenge Lead.
Okay, congratulations. It sounds really interesting. As you're talking, I'm just thinking of a situation in with a friend of mine where that type of information would be extremely helpful for her to make a very important decision in her life.
Mm,
And it's ironic that we're now talking about this today after just having that conversation last week and us commenting on the fact that there was no tests available to help her
mm,
make this decision that she needs to make. Um, so I know, just turning to femtech, I know it's a fairly new term. I think you coined it in 2015, 2016, and it's really kind of entered the landscape since then. It seems to be everywhere at the moment. Since its emergence, or since you promoted it first, how has the femtech landscape evolved, and what opportunities has it created for improving women's health outcomes?
mm. So the reason why I coined the term back in 16 was that I could see that there was sort of a handful of startups that were doing things that felt kind of neighboring to what we were doing at Clue.
Hmm.
And I knew from my own experience talking to investors and kind of being in the tech ecosystem that people felt that it was very niche and kind of maybe even a little bit embarrassing what we were doing. And I wanted all these companies building in this space to be understood as a whole, like
Mm-hmm.
something new that was big, that was happening in the tech world. And I wanted to also make it easier for people to talk about it, um, for sort of practical reasons related to fundraising. And so the start was sort of a scattered small dots here and there, and then it felt like the word has helped almost be like a little grain. That's something that the world was already very ripe with, could kind of crystallize around a little bit, and it has made it easier for people to find each other and for people to sort of orient
Mm-hmm.
around this thing happening. And it really is happening, and it's happening globally, and it's of course many startups building technology that are addressing the needs that women have that are specific because of our female biology. But it's also, it's VC funds that are saying we want to be a FemTech VC fund, or it's, you know, organizations, podcasts, university programs,
Mm.
political task forces. It's a lot of activity, and it has now become something that's recognized as a really big business opportunity and a
Yeah.
really big expenditure post in sort of national budget. We know from this report that McKinsey came out with in 2024 that it costs the world $1 trillion every year. Every year, like that's an astounding amount of money that women don't have adequate access to healthcare. So I think where we are now is that people are starting to understand that it's definitely not niche. It's as opposite as niche as it can get, because it's relevant, of course, to women, but it's actually relevant to society, and I would argue probably to our planetary health. So it's something that's relevant to all of us, um, and it's a really big sector with a lot of sort of potential that hasn't been
Yeah.
fully unfolded yet.
How did you get attracted into this area, Ida? And what exactly was your path leading up to where you are now in your career journey?
Oh, yeah, how do you become who you are? That's a
Yeah.
long story. But maybe I have to start with my parents, because my parents are adventurers. They travel the world with their two kids, me and my brother, on motorcycles since I was 1 year old. So I grew up seeing parents that managed to turn their sort of dreams into livelihood. And I guess I grew up with this belief that you can follow your um, ideas and somehow make them become reality. Or like you can do what feels deeply meaningful, and somehow that'll become a path. So I had done a lot of motorcycling with my parents, without my parents, as a job, and then at some point I realized that there'd been very little innovation in family planning methods. And I had been in steady relationships since I was 16. It was many years of you know figuring out how to not get
Mm,
pregnant. I tried to be on the pill. That didn't really work for me. So then what do you do? The options just didn't seem great.
mm,
And then in 2008, the first iPhone came out. I didn't have one, but I sort of looked at this device and I was like, it would be great if you could just take that thing out of your pocket, look at it, and it would tell you today you cannot get pregnant, or today you can get pregnant.
yeah.
And I thought, if we just knew exactly where we were in our cycle, we could use it as a contraceptive. And so I decided to try and build that. And uh, very unknowing of what would be ahead of me. I think that's a good thing when you start out.
Just kind of linked to that, you've been in the area, it sounds like, for quite a few decades now. In your opinion, what are some of the most important gaps in research data or clinical practice that innovation could help address in women's health?
Oh, I think the list is almost infinite,
Mm,
because the thing is, I think we've built modern medicine on kind of a picture of a man with a steady backdrop of a couple of hormones, or it's like we've never really understood until now how significant it is which gender a person is when
yeah.
we try to keep them healthy. And we are starting to realize that, so we have to revisit most things to figure out, does this actually fit female physiology? Um, and there has just been a massive research gap. There's so many questions, like moments where we just don't know, and science don't know. Um, and then beyond that, even things that we do know that we could do, like having access to birth control, or getting screened, or even just having basic, just even having a sanitary pad for your period. I mean, the
Mm.
most basic things globally we're still struggling with. So there's a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I read a book, I can't actually see my bookshelf to mention the name, about women's health and its development, and just for how long medicine was relying on this theory that women's wombs were wandering, which I always thought was a joke up until I read this book. But to discover that it was basically the underlining foundation for women's health for centuries was really shocking. Um,
Yeah.
so to go from that to where we are now, we have made huge leaps in a very short period of time. So it's actually quite exciting, I suppose, as women ourselves to see where that's going to take us as well. And then probably also kind of linked to that, we have more of these data-driven technologies. AI is now developing at a really rapid pace and becoming much more integrated into healthcare. How can we ensure that these are developed using inclusive data sets and governance frameworks that avoid reinforcing existing gender biases? So you mentioned there about data gaps on women's hormones, etc. What
Mm.
exactly can people in the industry do, or coming into the industry sector do, to make sure we don't fall into the same pattern that we've had for the previous centuries?
Oh, I mean, I think the honest answer is we already fell into it. I think
Yeah.
if you use, an AI now to ask a question on women's health, it will use the data that we had, which is incomplete and
Mm,
sometimes like just straight up wrong. Um, it's a huge problem, and I think it's urgent. And I think the remedy for not making that become worse is that we develop this awareness of, like, wait, okay, so we are developing this data set on whatever. Is it, do we have gender data? Can we make sure that we look if this is actually true and relevant in a woman or in a female population? Um, this awareness of gender mattering, or that gender matters, is something we have to develop across all of society, not just in
mhm.
health, but right. It's this question of, are the right people around the table? Um, and it's amazing to see women building technology that they need. They're tired of waiting, and they're doing this now, and they're doing it fantastically. But I have to say, I have come to believe that we need to really work on building bridges over to men. We have to
Mm.
include men. We have to make them feel this is relevant to them, that they can make a difference there, that they can make money there.
Yeah, and it's actually a very relevant theme, let's say, to pick up on, because we have all of this negative talk, I think is the word I'm looking for, about the manosphere and how women are being more alienated, and there's increases in inequality. And there was also a report recently showing that Gen Z men have certain expectations of women that men of our, let's say, millennium generation don't have anymore. And so how to overcome that. And I suppose if we have a sector which is called FemTech, how do women open this space up and say, this is also for you? Just because it's labeled FemTech doesn't mean that it's exclusive to women. We need your input as well. And so how could somebody who's maybe starting up in the space do that? And it seems like you've also been very successful yourself in this area, because I think Clue, you co-founded it with four men. You said this at the start, right?
Yes. Um, so first of all, I want to acknowledge that there's a reason why women are tired of trying to work with men, and they're just
Yeah.
like they're starting their own funds and they're building companies with women. And like I get it. I get it. But I do think for me, it's not a goal to say that something was built by women for women. I
Hmm.
think it's better to say built by a diverse team for the world. And it's also fair to say, no, we don't want men to build femtech products without women taking part, because that happens too. And we end up with
Yeah.
products that feels off, and we end up with a lot of power being held and a lot of very sensitive data being held by men only. And that's not a good scenario. So I really believe that we need men and women to work together. And I think it has to start with this invitation from women to say, yes, we do want you here. You are a man and you can be part of building a product about breastfeeding. And we need men in lots of different roles, right? We need them also as the journalists and the lawyers and the regulators and the investors.
And kind of linked to that, because I don't want it to seem like we're only just talking about men, because we also know that women's representation in the overall health sector, when it comes to private initiatives like this, it's very low in the STEM occupations, but also we seem to have problems when it comes to managerial and investment roles as well. What could be done there, and is there specific skills or interdisciplinary expertise that women should be looking at developing to maybe
Mm.
increase their successes in this area?
I understand why you asked a question like that, but I think we need to start also asking the question, what is it that men need to learn to make this work?
Hmm.
We are very good at fixing women, but when we have fixed them all the way, we have women who are almost men. And that's not the goal, is it? So I think it takes a lot of courage on women's part to be both courageous enough to speak up, to take responsibility, to lead, and to at the same time say, no, I want to do it this way. No, I don't like that.
Hmm.
No, this is who I am. This is what I think are important questions.
Um, and then just linked to that one, what skills and interdisciplinary expertise would be critical for the next generation of innovators working in femtech and digital health? And how can European initiatives like the Bright Skills Project help address those needs?
I think for me, the first step is to say, no, I have this set of life experiences and I know what I know. Because
Hmm.
what you're being met with is that you say, oh, this is important. You sit across a table full of dudes that have never lived it. And they're like, is it actually important? And it takes so much strength to say, yes, I know it's important. And maybe they go home, they ask their wife, and the wife said, no, it was not important. And they think it's not important. And you're like, like, but I have 10,000 emails from people who told me this was important. It
Mm.
takes a lot of strength to trust your own, conviction in what is a market opportunity or what needs to be solved. I think for the future, so another development I've seen that in the beginning, products were maybe kind of simple or more kind of consumer facing, and now they're becoming increasingly deep tech, um, and more integrated into healthcare systems. It's
Mm.
like, um, and so I think the skills needed to build deep tech to really, you know, be part of forming AI so that they fit our needs, like kind of engaging with technology, I think is really important. Um, there is, I mean, and then it's like I sometimes think of starting a company like this big jigsaw puzzle piece. You have to find, there's so many pieces that has to fit together. So yes, you need to understand the need in the market and the technology, but also what's the business model and what's my regulatory pathway and how do I understand communication and marketing, like is your field. And I mean, there's just so many parts and
Yeah.
pieces. And for that, I think we actually need a lot of generalist leaders where the most important thing they bring is this big vision. And maybe that's an encouragement to women to, in a way, have the audacity to say, no, I want this version of the world. I want the world to fit me.
Mm-hmm.
And here's what I think we need to do. And kind of be really bold. And I will also say to people who are thinking about starting companies, start with a really difficult problem. Start with a really big idea. Because other people want to work on something that feels meaningful,
Yeah.
important, impactful. And if you start with a small problem, it's as hard building the business, but you don't have that kind of juicy resource of other people being like, yes, I also want to do this. So have the courage to want to change huge, big, difficult things. I think that's important.
Okay. And then the last question I have for you, Ida, is looking ahead, what priorities should Europe focus on to strengthen the FemTech ecosystem and better support women-led innovation in healthcare?
I would love to see Europe having the courage to make women's health one of the big investment areas technologically. We can invest in AI, we should.
Mm,
Fusion energy, we should. But if you think about women's health as societal infrastructure and as part of a vision for Europe, if you think Europe as the healthiest place on the planet, the best place to be a human, the best place for nature.
really nice note to leave it on. So if women do better, everybody does better. Thank
Yeah.
you, Ada, for taking the time to join us today. It's been a real pleasure to speak to you. And to our audience, we will post the links to some of the content that Ida has mentioned. And we look forward to you joining us all again soon.